Okay, so we're continuing from yesterday's pasuk. Chaburos peta tamruk bara umakos chadrevaten. So little ambiguity, or more than a little ambiguity in the translation here, but bruises that wound or severe bruises. How did our school translate? Oh, bruises and wounds. That's how they did. They said chaburos u peta. Petayim, right? Was that?
Sadigon also.
Sadigon also, correct. Yeah. Bruises and wounds. Oh, Sadigon went even further, right? Chaburos and Pitzaim and Makos, Pneumios, right? All three of them. Okay, whatever. Bruises and that wound and blows to the chambers of the belly, cleanse or polish evil or with an evil person. Okay, so Tamruk is, we saw a translation, it means like to scour, like Meiri, which is to like take off the bad stuff, or it also means to like make it shine, you know? And those had kind of different connotations here. And then we also weren't sure if chaburos if makos is another noun or if it's a verb that's being ascribed to the chaburos. That if we said the verb translation, bruises that wound, cleanse and polish evil, and deal blows to the chambers of the belly. So there's more than a lot of ambiguity. Yeah.
Can also be it's going back on the verb, but the verb is going on both of them.
The verb is going both of them.
Chaburos and pets are tamruk bara, and so does makos chadrevaten.
Correct. Yeah, you can do it that way also. Yeah. Here you go. Yeah. Okay. So Sadigon said. Oh, so Matus Zion said Tamruk is removing impurities and brilliance. What word did he use there? I have Matus Zion here. Zikuk ubihiros, right? Bahir is to shine, right? So he seemed to view it as like a cleaning process that leaves something gleaming. Okay, and that was consistent with his shot, which we'll go to in a little while. Sadigon says it's to show off the doing of evil, right? As he said, the asiyas hara v'harasha b'farhesia lelokol busha. So doing ra in public without any shame. Okay. And then yesterday I did not have alter, but I looked him up today, and he says, so he translates it as with fearsome bruises, and he explains the Hebrew joins two synonyms in the construct state, bruises of wound, which as elsewhere is an intensifier. Okay, so that's the type of thing that I like alter for, because I didn't know that. Okay, fine. So fearsome bruises, that makes it much easier to read. And then scour away. I thought this was a funny comment. Oh, sorry. Scour away evil and blows to the belly's chambers. So he says there's some margin of doubt about the meaning of this term, especially since the consonantal text, which means the kri, shows as a verb, tamrik, which ordinarily does not appear in this particular conjugation, whereas the Masoretic marginal note, that's the ksiv, the consonantal text is the ksiv, and the Masoretic marginal note, that's the kri, corrects it to tamruk, unguent, which is a fancy word for makeup. The most likely meaning, if one considers the repeated affirmation of corporal punishment in Proverbs, is that the only appropriate way of dealing with an evil person is to beat the living daylights out of it. Which is, I just found that a funny thing here. Yeah, I mean, yeah. But even that is, even that needs like explanation, because the only time I've seen corporal punishment talked about in Mishlei is with regards to a fool, like a fool who can't understand Tochacha, but can still be corrected. I've never seen that with regards to a Russia. Like you beat the Russia and then that somehow cures him, you know? So I'm a little skeptical about that. Okay, so then let's just review what we had yesterday. What was that? Do I know any? Yeah, I mean, and in history, you know, there's plenty of examples there also. All right, so we had three ideas yesterday, right? We had Sean's idea, Ariel's idea, and Mati's idea. This is not counting the Mefarshim. So Sean's idea, correct me if I'm wrong, was that it's dealing with if you are open and blatant about your evil, like Sadigon, where you are kind of like doing it in a non-ashamed way, that's going to rationalize it, and that's going to cause you even more like internal harm.
Yes.
Psychological harm, right? And that was the chadrevaten, right? Because we saw chadrevaten was the depths of your psyche. Okay, right. So that was good. Ariel's idea was if you do conspicuous harm, that was the word I was looking for yesterday, conspicuous harm where you see the results of it, that itself could be an aid to helping you to do tshuva or to correct it. I forgot exactly how he was reading that into the second half of the pasuk. Whereas if but that's how he was reading chaburos petza, that if you do a bruise that results in a wound, then that could be used to tamruk bara to scour away the evil. But if you do a chabura that is not visible, then that's not like that, or that doesn't show it off. And then Mati's idea was if you do something in private, whether you do something in public, that's chaburos peta, that's like an open evil, or whether you do something in private, it's still going to cause you same imperfections. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a review. Okay. So let's do the mafarshim we did yesterday, and then we can look at some other ones that I found that are interesting. By the way, this is one of these, I looked at the mafarshim this morning. No one really knows what's going on. Okay, there's like many different interpretations here. So we had the Metzudas David, which I still would like to explain because it sounds like this is the plainest shot of the pasuk, but I just don't get it. He says, hold on. I had a dream last night that I think gave me insight into it, but I can't figure it out. It was, I'll tell you what the dream was later, but Metzudas David says, so bruises and wounds are what purify an evil man, to remove from him the corruption of the iniquity, because through them he will receive the punishment and his iniquity will depart. Umakos, gam makos b'chadrei vatan, also blows to the inner belly, chambers of the belly, yizachu avon, they will also purify the avon. Okay, so he's saying it's tamruk is to remove evil, and he's saying that if you get this punishment, that's going to remove the avon. And our question was, it doesn't automatically happen like that. You need to do tshuva, and there's nothing in here about tshuva. And furthermore, like this only works if you are open to it. Well, which I guess is kind of part of the tshuva thing. But you can have a Russia who gets beat up as much as is possible, and that's not going to like remove his avon. That's what I mean. Not necessarily literally. I mean, all right. Well, the pasuk is talking literally, but I don't think it's confined to literalness. Like the very fact that they use chaburos, petaim, and chadrei vatan means any sort of like pain, seemingly from outside, will have this effect. Yeah.
This reminds me very much of Rabbeinu Yonah in Mishlei, where he said that
Yeah.
the only way to rebuke seal,
Yeah.
I guess the soul seal, is to tell him that there are consequences of his bad or moral actions.
Yeah.
So it seems very similar here that the Russia is not something that listens like inherent argument that something intrinsically wrong for he's doing.
Right.
But he is averse to pain.
Right. So
He
meaning
can be shown that his actions are connected inherently to pain.
right.
That could cause him to report to it.
Correct. This sounds like it's going one step further, which is he actually needs to suffer the consequences. Right. Yeah. That's a good shot, right? All right, it's a better shot. I don't know if it's good yet, right? Because there, according to this, there still needs to be one step that he takes, which is first of all making the cause. Well, two steps: making the cause and effect connection between the pain he's suffering and the cause within himself, right? The avon, and then he needs to actually undo the avon. But you're saying that that's like the only viable route is if he actually suffers from it. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that has potential. So let's we took it off the back burner, but we're going to put it back on the back burner right now. Okay, because there are some other mafarshim who state this a little bit more clearly. But I want to go to the Rabbeinu Yonah, which we read yesterday, because I think I have an idea here. Rabbeinu Yonah said, "Chaburus petza tamruk bara umalkus chadrei vatan hine hakoach na'el bachurim." So strength is beautiful for youths, v'aseva lezakenim, and old age is beautiful for old people. Sorry, white hair is beautiful for old people. V'chein na'eh v'yafeh hayisurin v'hachaburos l'adam ra. So too, afflictions and bruises are beautiful for a bad man. Al kain ein la nudlo. Therefore, you should not literally go and visit him, but it means you shouldn't try to comfort him. Ulihitztair al yisurin habayin alav, and to empathize with the pain, with the afflictions that are coming upon him. Ki chaburot peta tikun ukshot b'adam ra, because bruises and wounds are a correction and a kshot is another word for correction for a bad man. Kamo mini hakshot shenayim leisha, just like jewelry is beautifies a woman. So that's how he's learning it, and he says tamruk is miloshin v'nason tamruk ehen, not to erase. And then he quotes the erasure thing. Also, you can say that it means that they erase the evil and they atone the sin. So the question was like, what is so bad about what would be so bad about empathizing with the Russia when bad stuff happens to him? He's saying don't do that and don't go visit him. So what do you say?
I think it's somewhat self-explanatory why you don't let people visit
Okay, why?
Russia, because you don't want to make it be condemned or.
Okay, so just to push that one step further, so how is empathizing with him gonna be an endorsement of his behavior?
I feel like I don't know. I can't really like articulate it, but I feel like it's somewhat.
Okay, I guess if you hold it self-explanatory, then there's no need to articulate.
Like,
Yeah.
It shows that you somewhat can understand where he's coming from, understand his pain, be afflicted by.
Okay.
You're afflicted by the fact that he's in pain.
Okay, so just to again, so I'll try again playing devil's advocate. Like let's say I don't know, like in America, like we doctors will care for anyone who comes in and is injured, even if they like are a criminal or something like that. So like when a doctor sees this guy wheeled up that the police brought in for like doing some crime and then he gets injured from it, and the doctor feels like, oh man, like this guy's in pain, why can't a person compartmentalize and say, well, fine, yeah, he did criminal actions, but this is also a human being who's in pain? Yeah, Mati?
So maybe from the other way of looking at it is that if you understood completely what he did, like that it was evil, you wouldn't.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Right. So like, yeah, right. So like, I think we can relate to this experience where like something bad happens to someone and you feel sorry for them, and then you realize that they just did something completely stupid that they should have known about, and then you feel less you feel like less empathy about it, because you're like, okay, yeah, like he should have known that. Why would he do something like that? Yeah.
And also, aside from what he's saying, there's also, if there's going to be a split of, say, like there's some body of good that's like then giving will to this Russia,
Yeah.
then if you were to then do something, or you were to
Empathize. Yeah.
with the Russia, then you're like joining his side in a way. Really, there's not this split of sides of like the good side and the bad side. And now for you yourself, you're now attaching yourself to
okay. So okay, hold on to that thought a second. That was the direction I was thinking. I mean, again, by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to flesh out the opinion. Yeah, Jakob?
I think this also comes from a value framework where things that are physically painful or pleasurable are good and bad.
Right.
Also things that are good and bad for your soul.
Right.
So
that's good.
If something is bad for your gut, for good for your soul, that should be seen as good.
That's good.
That's something to be even stuck about.
And the opposite is also true, that if this Russia has badness of soul, so then the real empathy, if anything, should not be for the pain that he's suffering. It should be for the fact that he made bad choices, and that's a different kind of empathy, because it's really on him that he's doing that. In other words, he's someone who, becoming overly attached to the fact that he's suffering physical pain, that is kind of catering to a false value system, a superficial value system, where you're saying that pain is bad and lack of pain is good. If anything, you should be. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah. If anything, you should be operating in the value system of this guy like did evil. Yeah. The approach you were taking, I was trying. As I was coming here this morning, I remembered anyone holding in Plato's Republic. So there's something that I was trying to find it this morning. When they're setting up like the ideal society and they're talking about the role of poets and like playwrights, I think he says that you should not have any depictions of like villains, where they're like successful. And the reason why is because it causes the people in the audience to identify with people who are doing evil and then get like vicarious pleasure out of that, and so that reminded that's I think along the lines that you're saying, David, is that like the danger is not necessarily that you are going to rationalize or justify his good behavior, but you'll identify with him, and then you'll have less resistance to like that behavior. In other words, there's a certain stigma of the Russia, and that stigma is good in terms of preventing you from like acting like them. But the more you identify with the Russia, then the less that stigma is there, and that could cause you to slip into that bad behavior, or maybe that's the door to like rationalizing it that you were saying, Ellie, that maybe this is the step that I was missing, is that like it's not like you see a Nazi suffering and then you're like, oh, Nazism isn't so bad, it's that you feel for this other person, and then you because you don't want to view yourself as doing anything bad, and you view yourself on the same side as them, then you're less inclined to view their actions as bad, something like that.
Like a step removed.
Yeah, it's a step removed. Yeah. We said that actually last year with Tehillim Aleph. Let me just pull that pasuk up here. Up Tehillim? Yeah. Not the beginning of the year though.
No.
Yeah, we said this is actually belongs in the beginning because it's very Mishlei. I don't know. I forgot why we said that. That made sense, but so it says where are we? Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach ba'atzas risha'im u'b'derech hatayim lo amad u'v'moshav leitzim lo yashav. Happy or / praiseworthy is the man who does not follow the counsel of the wicked, and on the path of sinners he does not stand, and in the session of scorners he does not sit. So the Radak learned it as it's in increasing levels of severity. That Russia here does not mean an evildoer; it means someone who's like chasing after money. And then Chataim is people who are sinning in terms of I think Taiva, and then Leitzim is like in terms of like aggressive lashon hara type comments and like ego pleasures. And so Chazal say, why do you have to? They have a drasha here, which is hold on. Yeah. So Chazal say, if you're not walking in the path of the Shaim, how are you going to end up standing, like standing still with them? And if you're not standing, how are you going to end up sitting? And if you're not sitting, how are you going to end up engaging in leitzanus? So it's saying basically, how are you going to fall into this chain progression? Rather, it's saying that if you walk with them, ultimately you're going to stand with them. And if you stand with them, ultimately you're going to sit. And if you sit, then ultimately you're going to scorn with them. So our question was like, how does that work? And the answer that we said was basically like, if you're not with Rishaim, let's say like there's the Rishaim and then there's your gang, so you don't identify with them. But let's say you start hanging out with them. So then you start to identify with them, and that dissolves the barrier, which allows you to put yourself in a different category. And you're like, okay, fine. Like, what's the big deal if they do this? And then you're like, but I'm not like a chote, and you distance yourself from that. But then because you're hanging out with Rishaim, you're going to end up hanging out with chotim, and then that's going to cause an identification. And then you're going to be like, okay, fine, but I'm not a late, so it's the identification is the bridge that allows you to destigmatize their behavior, and then that allows you to do the behavior. So this feeling pain when they get when the Rishaim suffer, that itself can build a bridge of empathy that can cause you to like emulate them. Yeah. That's why I also like hanging out with people who are not doing the right behavior. Again, that's what Tillam is saying, but saying like, oh, I'm not going to do what they're doing, and thinking they're out of the danger zone, that's not really out of the danger zone, because just hanging with them and identifying with them and their interests, and they're laughing at their jokes and like seeing aspects of yourself in them, that could be a bridge to emulating their behavior. So that's why like there's all this emphasis of like physically distancing yourself from Rishaim and people who are engaged in bad behavior. Okay.
Is that not like somewhat of a slippery slope today? Like that relating to them in one aspect will therefore take you all the way to the other?
Yeah, it is a slippery slope, but it's a real one. That's the thing that I heard a quote, I forgot who it was, that said that people criticize the slippery slope fallacy, which is true if it's a fallacy, but there is such a thing as like actual
Things that lead to
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The difference, when I was teaching AP English composition, then students would often ask, like, what's the difference between slippery slope fallacy and actual slippery slope? And the answer is, can you rationally explain how you get from A to B and B to C and C to D? And are the probabilities such that it's actually a concern? You know, a slippery slope fallacy is when you can't explain it. And you just say, like, you know, today you're going to be hanging out with Rashaim, tomorrow you're going to be like mixed dancing or whatever the joke that people say is, you know? Yeah. Okay. All right, so you want to see a weird shot? Okay, no judgment, but judgment. No, it's just it's creative. It's creative. Okay, so if you look at the very last page of the packet is where the Ralbags get stashed. Yeah, exactly. So on the right column, pasuk lamed. Now I don't understand all of the words here, but I think I understand enough to like put it together. Very last page of the packet. You got it? I remember last time we said very last page of the packet, there was some confusion that it didn't mean the last page. Yeah. Okay. So hine ktsas haraos. Oh, this is very interesting. The Al HaTorah text says Deos. Interesting. Okay, we'll have to see whether it's Raos or Deos here. Okay. I think I trust Torah's time better than Al HaTorah. Hine ktsas haraos. That does say Raos, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Some evils lo yirapu ki'im b'davar ra can only be healed through something evil or something bad. Okay, sorry, just background information here. This is a pet peeve of mine in Hebrew. It's really a pet peeve about English, but Hebrew, the word ra can mean harm, evil, bad, deterioration, corruption. It can mean a lot of things. Whereas when you translate it into English, you kind of have to commit to like badness, evil, harm. So just try to keep that flexibility here when we say ra. Okay, so some raos can only be healed through something ra. Okay. And that's what it means when it says that chaburos hapetza, they can only be cleansed and removed through ra. Ki'ilu tomar, for example, sheyusam behem ma sheyochal habasar kadesh yizgale, that you place onto these wounds, what will eat the flesh in order that it be exposed. V'yihye sham makom teitze hamugla. And then now I don't know what mugla is. Let me look at the dictionary here. And the mugla will exude or will come out. Hold on. Mugla. I have an example in mind. Anyone visualizing anything here about putting something that will eat the flesh? Leech doesn't eat the flesh, but I think you're on the right track though, because leech sucks the blood. But that could be an example of what he's talking about. But I think so I was thinking that's close. I was thinking maggots, right? Is if you have a festering wound with infected flesh, like gangrene was the common example, and you put maggots into the wound. Don't worry, I'm not going to do a Google images search. You can do that in your own time. So the maggots will eat the dead and infected flesh, but they will not eat the healthy flesh. And so clearly maggots eating at your body is raw. But in this case, it's the only way you can get at the thing that needs healing, and it actually helps because it removes the infected stuff. You know, yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought you were gonna raise your hand. You're just raising your hand to the gag reflex. All right, so I think that's what he means. And then he says, "V'makos megalos chadre veten hapetza hahu kedei lanakos es kol ipushav." This is the part I didn't quite understand. And in makos megalos chadre veten, that reveal the inner chambers of the belly, that petza, in order to remove all of its putridness. I don't know what he's saying. I think he's just giving another example of a physical ailment. Okay. I'm not sure. Magala, I'm really not sure. Yeah. So let's see what he says though. V'chein roy b'shave. Oh, same thing. Here's another disgusting example, right? Is lancing a boil. Right, if you have a boil that's filled with pus, then you are literally injuring it in order to like get out the pus. And I've been told that that's like something that they did that was good, right? Like you want to lance the boil, you don't want to not lance it. Okay, so v'chein roy b'shave lihisnaheg b'refuos chuli hamidos v'hadeos. Okay, he does say deos here, just not above. So too, it is proper in the same way to conduct yourself with ways to heal the sicknesses of midos and deos. And in Ralbagian language, deos means bad ideas, okay? Like false ideas. Kibal hamida hapechusa, someone who has a degenerate mida, Yerapa mimena b'shiar giluhu lehisnahig behefech hatchuna hachi behefech kol chalkeha. So he should accustom himself to behave in the opposite of that mida and in the opposite of all of its parts. Kadeshi is nake mimena nikui shalim, in order to completely cleanse himself of that. So that's like the Rambam's Hilchos Deos method, right? As you go to the opposite extreme. The avapisha hefech hatchuna hahi who gam kain maguna, even though the opposite of that extreme is also despicable, yisnahig ba ad yasur cholyo. He should conduct himself in it until he removes the sickness. So again, just common examples of the Rambam. He says Nazir is the big example, who he is addicted to wine. So he has to go to the opposite extreme of abstaining from all wine. And then he brings a chatas at the end of his period of Nazirus, because it's bad to abstain from wine. Yain is yisamach lavav enosh. It's a pleasure that God created. Borei priya gafen. It's good. So being an ascetic is bad, but you need to engage in that bad for a temporary time until you can return to the good. Or like what we did in Rama B'Kius, of if you have extreme haughtiness, you should go to the opposite extreme and do things that put you in situations of degradation. You know, like the Ram says, like sit in the lowest place and then like wear clothing that's going to make people like look down on you, in order to then get back to the middle, even though you're not supposed to get to the middle in that area. That was the question. Yeah. Okay. So you're engaging in a bad in order as a temporary measure to get back to the middle, you know, or like, I think they did this back then. If you had a fever, how would they cure you? Cold, yeah, like freezing water, right? I don't know if that's still like medically advisable or not, but you know, but being in cold water is really bad, but it like gets you to the opposite side. Okay, so that part, I mean, we can ask the question, how does that work? That's kind of the whole Hilchos Deos thing. What's a basic idea of like how that technique can work with midos before we get on to the Deos thing? How does going to the opposite extreme cure you?
One thing is that it shows you don't need the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it actually almost gets back to the thing we were saying from the Rabbeinu Yonah, which is when people identify with their emotions, or they blend with their parts, if you want to say that, which is that let's say you have a certain trait, like let's say you are a miser and you can't bring yourself to spend money, and you want to try to break that so you can spend money. So you identify with that as part of who you are. I am someone who's extremely frugal, you know? So when you force yourself to live with the other opposite extreme, and then you get to like see, oh, I can be this person who spends money, you break identification with that other self, and you realize that your emotions are not you, or your midos are not you. And that allows for that certain flexibility, which you can then assess what midos are actually rational to like conduct yourself with, you know? Also, just from a purely behavioristic standpoint, which is more like the Sefer Chinuch type approach, of if you are addicted to a certain behavior and then you like force yourself to routinely do another behavior, then you can change, you can rewire the habit. You know, how that works is a whole question, you know? Okay, so I think with midos, that's not as big of an issue, but this is the thing that intrigued me. Because so too, this is what you need to do, what people who harbor false ideas need to do. They need to investigate all the places that direct them to this mistake, and then remove it from them. Even though this will cause you to investigate that which is not proper for a person to investigate, nevertheless, he should not refrain from doing this in order to heal himself, to remove the sickness from him. So what does he mean plain shot, first of all?
Sounds like believe in Christ or something. You should read the New Testament.
Yeah, it does sound like that, right? Yeah. So it sounds like there is a certain thing, like in other words, ordinarily we say for a healthy person, you should not expose yourself to dangerous false ideas. Let's say like in the realm of Los Asur Achar Levav From Acharei Nechem, where the Rambam says, that anything that can uproot one of the ikarim, because you're not trained in proper thinking, you should avoid. Not just you should avoid. It's usher to expose yourself to. Because if everyone just followed their deficient mind, then they might destroy the entire world based on their susceptibility to like false ideas. But what sounds like he's saying is if you get sick from a false idea, like I don't think any of us are in danger of becoming Christians, but let's say like there are certain arguments that people make against Torah from like the academic sector or from the atheistic sector. If you have become sickened by those, he's saying that you may need to involve yourself in seeing the roots of those errors in those texts themselves in order to cure yourself from it, And if you stayed in the middle and you're like, well, I'm plagued by these doubts from these questions, but I'm not going to go into it, that could actually keep you sick. And I'll give you what's perhaps the best example of a famous sefer that actually did this for people who were sick. More Nevuchim, right? That was the thing, is that the Rambam says who he wrote it for. He wrote it for people who did have a certain degree of perfection in the preparatory arts of like logic and math and like learning how to think. And they had a certain amount of knowledge of Torah, but they were confused by certain phrases in the Torah that implied false ideas about God. And they were also confused by Aristotelian ideas that went against the creation of the world, that went against the doctrine of the creation of the world. So he had to guide them through these areas in order to disabuse them of those notions. And I think, isn't there a story about the Rav, sorry, not about the Rav, about Rav Moshe Soloveitchik and Rav Chaim, that I think, and don't quote me on this, although you're probably gonna quote me on this. Just find, I'm saying this so someone can find the source, that the Rav said that Rav Chaim knew the More Nevuchim Bal Peh, but Rav Moshe didn't learn the More Nevuchim, So I don't know what point he was making when he said this, but apparently like Rav Moshe was not, didn't see the need to learn that, or he wasn't bothered by the same questions, whereas Rav Chaim did, Similarly, I think the Rav made a statement elsewhere about how like in his day, when these questions of, let's say like the implications of evolution for, for like Torah and stuff, like where people were like bothered by these things. I think he said like he just wasn't bothered by that, Yeah. Were you gonna ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just taking the opposite. It sounds like it's taking the thing and changing you or taking it.
Well, he's saying you need to be involved in Ra in order to heal the Tov. So this is not here he doesn't use the word Hefech, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's just, and that was the original mashal, is that in order, so how's he reading the pasuk? Chaburas Petza Tamruk Bara, that festering wounds might be the way he translates it, right? Festering wounds, you need to heal with harm, okay, which is like doing something to them that is actually a ra, and makos chadre batin, and you need to like beat a what do you call the innards of the belly. I mean, another example of this might be like I don't know where you draw the line between like legitimate like massage and physical therapy and like chiropractic and like things that are like sketchy, but like some of these painful procedures, like I'm sure like in sports massage, there are things that are very painful, that feel like you're being injured, but like are actually like like healing you, yeah. So I thought that was a very creative interpretation here. I don't know what to make of it, but I think we have an idea here, but like I don't know, like it's completely different than everyone else. Yeah. If you take this too far, though, this was one of the controversial doctrines about the original Hasidim. I believe which I'm not aware of any Hasidim who do this now, but like the belief that you have to descend into evil in order to redeem the holy sparks that are there. This might have even been pre-Hasidus, because I think this is what Shabtai Tzvi claimed when he converted to Islam, right? That he had to descend into the evils of Islam in order to like liberate it, and then that just didn't work out. Yeah. So like that would be like a bad version of that you need to like actually partake of. Like he doesn't take it that far. He doesn't say you need to do Avera in order to like cure the Avera. So like just wanted to draw the line there. Okay, let's look at the Meiri. That was another interesting one I saw. Let's see, the Meiri on page. So usually the Meiri style is he does the nigla and then the nistar. He does the the open meaning and then the hidden meaning. Here he weaves them in and out. Okay, so we're going to read through both of them. He says on the next page, Yesh mefarshim shehi ha'ara al sifsei halakos. There are some people who say that this is an idea about flattery. Okay, literally smooth talking. Ashrei rahu mishamin vehema psichus. That's a pasuk from Tehillim, which means that I read it this morning, but I don't know how to translate it again. 50, what does it say? 55 something? 55:22. The full pasuk says, smooth were the buttery words of his mouth, but his heart was at war. And then here's our quote, his words were softer than oil, yet they were curses. Okay, so it's like flattery. This refers to someone who displays in front of his friend great love. V'libo gadol b'sina, but in his heart he has great hatred. Uv'hishtadlus hara, and striving for harm or for evil. V'alzeh amar shechaburus petza, rosh lamar chaburus shel petza shehi gdola, hu hatamruk bara. What it means is chaburus of petza that are tremendous. I think it means like altars that like severe wounds. Hu hatamruk bara. That is the tamruk of evil. Rosh lamar kishut hadavarim. That's the jewelry or the beautification of evil. V'chalak amarim lemisha harat safan belibo, and it is the smooth talking or the smooth statements of someone who has ra in his heart. V'chein hu makos yordos chadre batan. Same thing with people who with the makos that descend to the belly.
It is also makos that go down.
Oh, that might be a better read. Yeah, It also is makos that go down to the belly. So I don't know what he means by the second part, but the first part, let's just work with the first part here. He's saying basically that if you have a guy who really wants to wound, so then he's going to put on makeup, which means he's going to flatter you with words, okay, in order to conceal his evil intent. What do we get out of that? Yeah, I guess let's work on the idea, then try to read the pasuk.
What is this a warning for?
I think it's a warning for people who are going to be subject to sounds like it's a warning against people who might be subject to this harm. But the question is, how do you know it, right? I guess you always have to suspect. If there's reason to suspect flattery, then don't be taken in by the the flattery, right? That's this is not like the best example of this because it's not evil, but it's always I always would smile, at least inside, but sometimes outside, if like a misbehaving student would randomly come up to me one day in high school, Rabbeinu Yonah, I love your class. Okay, what are you gonna try? What trick are you gonna try to pull on me? It's like suddenly you randomly decide to say that you love the class, but again, it's a very, people are very prone to flattery, you lower your guard, oh, this person must be good because they say good things about me, that's like a raya that they actually aren't hard-banging bad. I want to show you one more interpretation. We're going to come back to this, but the Ibn Kaspi has something similar, but he puts it in the religious sphere. 20, and there are, again, I don't get this. There are two Pirushim of the Ibn Kaspi, and I can't make heads or tails about what the purposes of each one is. So he says like this: Hine hameruk bara hu hanose levad. Okay, so he says, I think grammatically this means the tamruk bara is the subject, and the other words are predicates. Kilo amar tamruk bara hu chaburus petza umakos chadre batan, meaning that, I don't know how, the tamruk bara is severe wounds and makos chadre batan. Let's try that out. It's known that a petza is worse than a chabura. A wound is worse than a bruise. But both of them are on the outside of the body. Levair shechaburus kashos. So it's juxtaposing two of them to show that they're both that wounds are bad, bruises are bad. Achi giu legeder hapetza, until they reach the level of wound. In havdel bein amarnu petza ubein amarnu chaburus petza. Because there's no difference between petza and chaburus petza. Makos kadre baten heim bipnimi haguf. But makos kadre baten are internal injuries. Rotoni maka shel chalal. Now chalal means corpse. Okay.
Like
But it also means a hollow, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I guess it means in the inside of the body. Bine bara imshu shame nigzar leishra. So it could be ra here means a bad person. O who shame dimayon rishon haole b'inyan echad, or it just is the first thing you associate means evil. Okay, here we go. Ki hakavana ledaber al hamiskachim hamitaharim. This is talking about people who act holy and act pure. Okay, here's I think he's using hispile as like feigning, like as faking. Derech ona'a ugneva, by way of cheating and theft. Umarim le'inayim ulchitzon shem nikim umamrukim, and they display to people's in people's sight and to the externals as if they are clean and scoured of evil. You know what I mean? Like they don't have any evil. Uvakiram irvam, but inside they are waiting for ambush. V'amur tamruk derech hash'ala, it's using makeup or cosmetics by way of analogy. Kihu nase lahachlik haor v'chiton haguf. It's made to smooth out the skin and the outside of the body. Ulhadbik kol chabura upetza. I think lahadbik, I'm getting from context, it means to like cover up all chabura and petza. V'hiflig lomar ki tamruk barahu hefek teva tamruk. And it's saying that tamruk bara is the opposite of the nature of a tamruk. Kihu osed the ms chaburos upetzayim v'chiton haguf. In truth, it is making wounds and bruises on the outside of the body, and it can even cause internal injury. So I didn't quite get all of that, but he's taking the same approach as the Meiri, saying that you're basically like putting on external appearances in order to cover up internal corruption. You know, he's saying in terms of like people trying to cheat others and they're making themselves seem holy. You know, this is like, let's say, for example, people who will put on frum garb and go door to door collecting tzedakah, but really they're like scammers, you know? Yeah.
It's sort of like the same idea as a Rabbeinu Yonah, but reversed.
How so?
The,
Oh, yeah, go on. I think I know what you mean.
like
Go on.
covering up what really is a
I thought what you're saying is it's similar to the Rabbeinu Yonah because they are using the same bait, which is in a way identification with the value system. Or actually, it's not really that. I guess that's a stretch. Yeah, they're trying to trick you. This is the old pig, right? That Chazal say about the Chazir displays his hoofs that are split, saying, "See, I'm kosher," but then inside he doesn't chew his cud. You know, they use that as a marshal for the person who acts religious and wears tzitzis. You know, that's the example they give, but really is inside like engaged in all sorts of bad. Yeah.
I think what's calling you now is the fact he says that you think that it's good.
Yeah.
The covering up, but really it's bad for you.
Uh-huh. You think that the covering up is good for you? How's that Rabbeinu Yonah?
In the same way we think that the pain said Rosh is bad because it's pain it's actually good for your soul.
Right.
So too, it's bad for your soul here, the covering up would be.
Uh-huh. Right. This sounds much more like both with the Meiri and the Ibn Kaspi, that it's not a mistake of thinking that that which is bad is that which is good, in the sense of like messing up your values. It sounds like you actually are taking what appears to be good as reflecting genuine good. Like you're being tricked, you know? Yeah. And it's funny. Then he goes, let's just read it and just see what we get. Same thing with the esoteric meaning. Romas tamruk bara al chelkas imre hamisnagdim asher behem yimashku halavavos. This is getting tricked by the smooth talking misnagdim. Here, misnagdim, he means people who are like opposed to Torah, that their arguments draw people's minds. Some people say it's in a Torah idea, like the Mitzvahs David, that afflictions will cleanse you. That bruises, which is a mashal for punishments, they are a cleanser for the evil man to remove his evil. Okay, fine. Tamruka v'tochachto. You could also say in the open meaning that bruises are his scouring and his tochacha. Klomar shlo yivastru b'dvarim. Oh, this is like what you were saying, Yaakov. That he will not be rebuked with words. The only way that degenerates can be corrected is through submissiveness and degradation of like actually suffering these things. So too, you can say on the derech nister that this is needed to make to promote submissiveness for the yetzer that is rooted in your heart. Kenyan haram pasuk v'dvarim lo yivasru eved. So let's summarize what we have got. Yeah.
Just another thought related, or at least
Yeah.
in your topic window. I was thinking a similar way of like a derech nistar. But there's like certain things that like internally, like on the surface, seem like, oh, they're great, like smooth way things are gonna go.
Yeah.
But they're like just they're like tricking you, like, oh, whatever, I don't know, whatever it could be, like someone like is pulling you to go do something that seems like it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
But really it's not, it's there to like trick you and get something else out of you.
Right. That's good. That's good. That's good. You said this is for the nistar, right?
It doesn't,
Or it could be both.
It doesn't start again.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah, because talking about the internal world. Yeah. So let's just conclude by summarizing what we've gotten from the pasuk. I'm not going to re-summarize the ideas from yesterday, but so Rabbeinu Yonah, we had an idea that don't put yourself in positions where you empathize with Rashaim, because somehow that is going to lead to, or can lead to you doing their bad actions, whether through identification with them and then reducing the stigma, or like, some other self-evident way, like Ellie was saying, that you're going to somehow like rationalize their behavior. So that was Rabbeinu Yonah. Then we have the Ralbag, which was saying that sometimes the only way to cure one bad is to do another bad. And that's in Midos by going to the opposite extreme. And that's in Deos by, if you are sickened enough with a false idea, to actually delve into the original sources of the false idea in order to like extricate yourself from that, which you wouldn't do if you weren't sick with a bad idea, because that could expose you to more harm, and I actually, a side example of that, I asked Rav Pesach for a heter one time in teaching allegorical readings of Bereshit to high schoolers, because the way that a lot of the Rishonim talk, the ones who hold that there's allegorical readings hold that like it's a sod, and I was asking like should I teach it to them, and secret or a esoteric idea. And so Rav Pesach said, like, maybe it was back then, but now when there are so many people who are like making fun of Adam and Chava, like academics and secular people saying like, oh, this is just ridiculous Bible stories, then it'd be better to go into the and show that there is a legitimate reading that's an allegorical thing within the Masorah itself. That's not really a ra, but it's like it partakes of a ra in the sense that it's exposing a secret, Okay, and then we had the smooth talking thing, which we didn't really work out. Okay, all right. So on to the next parak tomorrow. Lee Netter. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.